I want to say good morning again in behalf of the State Boards of Pardons and Paroles and to our host, DA Natalie Payne. It's a privilege to bring the 31st statewide Victims Visitors Day to the city of Augusta. We've been doing this since 2006, almost 13 years now. The Parole Board sets aside at least 2 opportunities every year somewhere in the state to receive victims and have their input. And it gives us a lot of pleasure today to report to you that as of today, more than 4,000 victims have been given the opportunity to sit privately in a very confidential setting and to add their input to the offender's files. And that's done prior to any decision being made on parole. And the uniqueness of that is, as you know, the Parole Board is constantly revolving, but those statements and that input is left there to remain in perpetuity. So whatever board member comes or whatever the board looks like, everyone will have an opportunity to see and understand the input that comes from victims, which is placed in that file. All 5 decision makers are with us today. They've all set it aside and make this a priority, and they always do this. We're always gathered together. Although we're separate a lot, we get together on these occasions because this is high priority. And I want to just briefly introduce, I'm just going to ask them to stand so you can see who they are. And I'll start with David Herring. He joined the board in 2018. David, if you will stand. This is David. Jacqueline Bunn joined the board in 2016. Brian Owens, who is our vice chairman, joined the board 2015. And James Mills, past chairman of the board, joined the board 2011. I'm Terry Barnard, and I joined the board 2010. It's an undisputable fact that your board, your parole board, has made great progress in allowing victims to put their input into our files. And we've taken a lot of pride in making that input easy and making it effective. For all of those, and this is important, to all of those who care to register with the Georgia Office of Victim Services. And I'll remind you this, if you don't register, so often we don't know you and we don't know where to find you. And even though we have made it a task, Shalandra and her group at the Georgia Office of Victim Services do everything within their power to find and to seek out and to search out victims everywhere, even to some extent to other states. So you can make it much easier on the board to be able to weigh in your input by getting with the Office of Victim Services and register so that we can contact you when we need to know and need to hear from you. You know, the process of parole, and you may not recognize this, but the process of parole begins with those impact statements. And those impact statements are received when? At the time of the sentence, at the sentencing court. Many of those impact statements are given to the parole board through the courts, and they also become a part of the permanent file. But you have an opportunity to constantly update that. You know, that which happened back when the crime was the freshest, obviously at the day of sentencing or thereabout in that time, is important to us. But how things have progressed along the way. How do you feel now? Where are you at in your life now? What has this done for you now today? Those are very important matters that the board likes to hear and know about. If a victim wishes to be notified prior to the statutory eligibility date, then you'll have an opportunity to do that. So often we will actually send you a letter. And actually now we're contemplating even making phone calls. For some of those crimes which are less than life, it might come sooner. Like obviously state law requires eligibility to be at 1/3 of your sentence or 1/3 of the sentence. And so some of those shorter sentences, we may actually be considering parole at an earlier time. So in some of those cases, you may actually get a phone call from the Georgia Office of Victim Services to let you weigh in. We'll let you weigh in prior to that consideration being taken up by the board. As I said earlier, that eligibility is not, and now let me underscore the word not, eligibility is not set by the board. Eligibility for parole is set by state law. And many of those eligibilities will happen at 1/3 of the sentence. And then as for those who are serving life sentences, this can get just a tiny little bit confusing, but that eligibility also is set by state law, but it's set by the date that the sentence was fixed. So therefore, if someone actually committed a crime that actually rose to the level of a life sentence prior to 1995, then that eligibility actually occurs after they've only served 7 years in prison. And then between the years of 95 and 2006, if that life sentence was fixed by the court, that eligibility will occur once that offender serves 14 years. It seems like a short term for a life sentence, but that's the law. And those who actually commit the crime, the court affix their sentences after 2006, then after they've served 30 years in prison, they become eligible. In Georgia, parole is not a right. And it's an interesting thing because you can talk to an inmate from time to time, and it has gotten to be such an custom that some can tend to think that, but parole is not a right. There is no right for parole in the state. But I will tell you this, and this is where it gets a little bit hairy. Even though parole is not a right, the courts, including the United States Supreme Court, has stated that if an inmate becomes eligible, they must be given meaningful consideration at some point in time during their sentence. Well, Georgia says that meaningful consideration will start at eligibility. So it is a burden of the parole board to start that process and try to determine where these particular offenders fit in the maze as toward release. And that's why you're so important to us. That's why your part is so important to us, because we want to see and we want to know where you are at as well. Some time ago, the events like we have today, we call it Victims Visitors Day. And even prior to my coming on the board in 2010, there was Victims Visitors Day. And it's my understanding that victims would travel from everywhere, all across the state, even other states, to meet on a centralized location, most likely somewhere there in Atlanta. And they would meet with the board. But sometime back, and I don't remember exactly when, the board decided that this is not how we will do it. We will start traveling to all the regions throughout the state, and we will actually meet with victims in their communities, in their homes, where they live, where they work, and sort of see the community as well. And that has become so successful. As I said earlier, we do at least 2 a year. And so in doing that, it's an interesting nuance now. The parole board has become the visitors. We are the visitors today. And this actually, in my mind, is no longer Victims Visitors Day, but it's Victim Input Day. And let me underscore that, input. We think it's very important that your input be put there. And let me go beyond this, although this might suffice. More than just, we just don't want it out, or her out, or him out. That's well enough. But tell us why. Tell us what's happening in your life. Tell us why that you think that this is so important to you. And let us document that reason. Let's go beyond just the obvious and help us to understand that. It is our goal as a parole board to leave no victim in the dark. Absolutely no victim will be left in the dark. If a victim wants to be notified, then we're going to do everything that we can to notify you and let you have your place in the parole process on multiple occasions throughout the process. We're always interested in any new information that we can gain and we can place in those files. And the parole board this morning looks forward to meeting with each and every one of you as we consider these very serious matters of eligibility. And today, we'll make your comments, once again, permanent. They'll be there throughout the entire time that this individual serves in prison. And I'll say thank you, Natalie, for inviting us. We're encouraged that we've got so many people who are coming. You may look around and see a lot of empty seats here, but don't be surprised by that, because we actually made this a little more efficient in that we've scheduled appointments so that we can move this process along throughout the day. I understand close to 200 people will come, and we'll have an opportunity to talk to the board. And I think we're viewing 70 or 80, I don't remember what the cases loads are of individual cases this morning. So it's going to be a good day, and we look forward to it. Thank you so very much.